Hi, ladies. Danielle will be joining us shortly. I'm just going to start to set up her presentation. Hey,
Hey, can you hear
how
me?
are you? Yes,
Good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm going to actually hop off of screen and then have your presentation going. So whenever you need to click to another slide, just let me know.
Okay, perfect.
And ladies that are in the chat now, if you double click my screen share, it will expand the video. So you aren't looking at it in like a gallery form. It will be bigger for you to see. All righty. Have a great session.
Thank you. So we will give it just a few more minutes. We'll get started at about 11:10 just to give time for everybody to enter the session. And we'll give it just one more minute. I still see people entering. So like I said, we'll get started at 11:10. Thank you guys for joining me today. Okay, it is 11:10, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for joining me today to talk about self-care. With the week that we've had, I feel like this is just a very timely conversation. So thank you for joining me and wanting to learn more about how you can implement self-care in your life transitions. So the title of my presentation is Mixed Emotions, Mixed Results, Navigating Self-Care in Life Transitions. Next slide, please. So I wanted to start off today by just kind of telling you all who I am and why self-care is so a passionate topic for me. So first, I'm Danielle Jones. I am from the great state of Georgia. I went to Hampton University, where I graduated in 2013 with my bachelor's in sociology and a minor in psychology. I then went on to Mercer University and got my master's in clinical mental health counseling and graduated in 2015. I now attend the University of West Georgia, where I'm receiving my educational doctorate in clinical counseling as well as professional supervision. I am a member of the best sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I've been a therapist for about 5 years now. I have experience working with detained youth, as well as psychiatric patients, teenagers within high schools, and recently young adults into middle-aged adults. I also have a great fiance named Brian, and that is our great puppy Jet, who is about 8 months and literally runs our house. Love him. So the reason why I'm so passionate about self-care is because when I was in school, they would preach like, oh, you need to practice self-care. Like you're going to burn out being a therapist if you don't have self-care. And I was just like, I self-care all the time. I nap, I go out to eat. But as I became a therapist, I realized how hard it was to practice other forms of self-care, like setting boundaries and things like that within my life. So I found myself kind of burning out in my earlier years of being a therapist, especially working with detained youth when you kind of take their problems home with you. And so as I started to develop my practice, I realized that I want more people to know about self-care and how important it is and what it looks like, because a lot of times we think it looks like a nap or taking a walk, but it's so many other emotional pieces to self-care that I feel like a lot of people don't tap into and causes them not to practice self-care. Next slide. So today's discussion. So we're going to talk about what is self-care. I want to give you all a definition, as well as some types of self-care and some barriers to self-care, as well as what is a life transition, some application, and then what's next for you all. Next slide. Also, something I forgot to mention, please put any questions or comments that you have in the chat box, and I will answer them as we move through the presentation or towards the end of the presentation, depending on what your question or comment is. So please don't be shy. Please put everything in the chat box and I will see it. So I wanted to start off with an icebreaker to kind of see how you all feel about self-care, and just so I can kind of read the room. So I want you all to answer these questions in the chat. What does self-care mean to you? And do you engage in self-care? No response is a dumb response or a bad response. Self-care is what you make it. And I really want to start that mentality today of us taking back what self-care means to us, not what the media says self-care is, not what your mom says it is, or your auntie or your cousin, but what do you think self-care is? So please put your responses in the chat. Okay, having a Netflix marathon, that's definitely one of my favorites, and you'll see that as we go through the presentation. Someone said making time to relax and decompress. As a therapist, I definitely can appreciate relaxing and decompressing. Doing anything you enjoy doing. Yes, literally anything. That can be whether you're reading a book, whether you're sitting in silence, taking a walk. Those are all great forms of self-care. Shutting out the world, reading, turning off your cell phone. Yes, especially during times like this, turning off your cell phone is so clutch, because our cell phones are like literally a part of our lives. Like we're pretty much addicted. And a lot of times we have a lot of notifications popping up and just kind of messing with our minds. And so turning off your cell phone is probably one of the best ways right now to definitely practice self-care. Thank you guys for those responses. And feel free to drop more responses in as we continue. And I'll go on to the next slide. Okay, so what is self-care? Self-care is the practice of taking an active role in protecting one's own well-being and happiness, in particular during periods of stress. So what it looks like. So there are physical practices to self shopping, taking a bath, or running, etc., like some of the other ones that you all mentioned as well. Mental practices, setting boundaries, meditating, and then health practices, exercising, or like changing your diet. So as you can see already, self-care looks different in different ways depending on what you have going on in your life and what you need to do at that moment. There are times when you may need to practice more physical practices over mental practices, like removing yourself, or, you know, something of that nature. And then there are times when you do need more health practices where, if you know, you feel your health declining, you may want to change your diet or exercise more. So why don't people practice self-care? Like, if it's so easy and, you know, we have all these different ways to do it, why don't people do it? Some people don't feel worthy. I've heard from a lot of friends, especially some of my first time mom friends or people who are recently married, like, I don't feel worthy, or I don't have the time. Like, they don't feel like they should be practicing self-care because they're supposed to be there for so many other people, that who are they to take time away from those people to practice self-care and be there for themselves? You have to be selfish with your time if you want to be there for other people and really be there presently. Because if you're not practicing self-care and you're trying to be there for all of these people, it's not going to happen. Like, something is going to fail, and usually it's your health or what you're trying to put into life. Not knowing what self-care is. So like I said in the beginning, when I was struggling practicing self-care, I wasn't sure what self-care looked like. To me, I thought it was just, you know, little things like taking a nap or taking a trip. I didn't realize that there were so many mental practices or health practices that I could take for self-care. So once I realized what it looked like, it was like, okay, cool, now I can practice self-care because I can make it what it is for me and not what a textbook says it is, or what might work for a friend or a family member. Next slide. So I know you're probably asking, what does self-care have to do with accomplishing my goals? So as I stated before, like, self-care is so important, because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to accomplish your goals. If you're not mentally well and you're not, you know, present and okay with everything that's going on with you, you're not going to be able to even know what your goals are, or even be able to sit down and create goals, because you're so worried about being there for other people, being present in situations that really you don't need to be present in. And so if you're utilizing self-care, you're able to sit down, you're able to make a list of what your goals are. You're able to make a list of, how can I accomplish these goals? What is it going to look like for me to accomplish these goals? And what do I need to do to accomplish them? And so self-care is everything that has to do with your goals. Next slide, please. Life transitions. So a life transition is a life-changing event that causes us to re-examine our present sense of being. They can be predictable, but can often be unpredictable. So predictable life transitions would be like moving, a new job, a marriage, or graduation. So these are all things where you're able to know that they're happening so you can prepare. And I know if you're like me, I'm a planner. So for me, predictable life changes are some of my favorite, because I can prepare, I can create a list, I know what's going on. And so my self-care is a little bit better during those predictable ones, because I'm able to figure out what I need to do next and how to move through. The ones that really shake me are the unpredictable life transitions, like a sudden death, for some people, pregnancy, divorce, or like an accident. Those ones are the ones that kind of shake me, and I really need my self-care during those times, because those are the times when I definitely can feel myself spiraling. Like recently, my fiance was in a car accident. So that was a very unpredictable life transition for me, because I was like, oh, wow, he drives every day. Wasn't expecting for him to get into a car accident. And so those are times when I have to kind of, like somebody mentioned earlier, kind of just check out and really relax to myself, because you really have to recognize when you need to use self-care and what type of self-care you need to use. So recognizing maybe you might use a certain type of self-care during predictable situations that you wouldn't use in unpredictable situations, and vice versa. And also trying out different self-care methods during these life transitions to see which ones work best for you. And also being able to share some with other people and get other people's ideas. I know I mentioned earlier that some people's self-cares might not work for you, but during unpredictable times, you never know what won't work until you try it. And so definitely just thinking of how you can utilize some of the self-care that you all put into the chat. How can you use it in some of these predictable and unpredictable situations? Next slide. Okay, so somebody earlier mentioned having a Netflix marathon. I love watching TV. I love sitcoms, especially Black sitcoms. And so my application portion of my presentation, it really comes from my binge watching during the pandemic. And so I've taken some of my favorite characters from different shows, and I want to show you how to apply self-care to their life transition situations. So I picked 6 of my favorite characters. And so I hope that you're able to take away and kind of see these characters differently than maybe you've seen them when you watch some of these shows, or maybe you saw them differently than I did. And if you did, please put that in the chat, and we definitely can like have a discussion on how you viewed them and maybe how you might use self-care in these situations versus how I applied it for them. Next slide. Okay, so first we have Joan from Girlfriends. I'm pretty sure everybody is familiar with Joan. She was kind of like the mother of her friends. It was Joan, it was Tony, it was Maya, it was Lynn. Joan was often doing the best. She was a lawyer, you know, she had the top job, you know, she frequently dated. She had a nice house. Everybody went to her house for the holidays. She was just really that put together friend that was kind of the matriarch of her friendship. She didn't cope well with spontaneous changes or deviating from plans. So anytime any of her friends kind of went against her vision of them, it was hard for her. Like when Maya got her new house, it was hard for her to adjust to doing holidays at Maya's house versus we always do holidays at my house. Or when Lynn was doing different things and didn't need her, it was hard for her to grasp, well, Lynn, why are you doing so well? Why don't you need me? And then, of course, when Tony started to get married and have kids, we saw how Joan kind of spiraled and allowed herself to like self-sabotage a lot of her friendships and a lot of the different things that she had going on. She often let her own anxiety cause her to ruin important moments for others and herself. Joan was always self-sabotaging within relationships. Anytime she would have a healthy relationship, it seemed like it was going well. All of a sudden, she would find a way to throw a wrench in it, and it would just discombobulate. And so she always would blame other people as well when all of these things would happen. And so Joan just really struggled with how to be there for her friends and relationships and how to practice self-care to where she doesn't self-sabotage within these situations. So different ways to practice self-care when you have changes with friends or you have changes where you just are not good with change, where a lot of people are horrible with change, like we mentioned earlier with like the predictable and unpredictable life transitions. So some ways to practice are be flexible with your friends. You're going to grow with your friends. And so you have to be flexible with whether they're growing with you or they're growing away from you, and whether they want to change their goal, they want to do a different goal. Like just because last week they told you they want to own a boutique, this week they tell you they want to own a coffee shop. Don't be that friend that's like, well, last week you said this. Why don't you want to do that? Don't be that friend, because that's going to cause you to stress and it's going to put unnecessary stress on them. So definitely be flexible with your friends and their goals. Speak up when something's bothering you. Times friendships end because we're sitting on things that bother us and we don't allow it to actually come out and let people know like, hey, that really bothered me that you said that, or that bothered me that you didn't invite me to go out to eat the other day when everybody else was there. Speak up on it in the moment. You know, take time to really think of how you want to say it and how you want it to come across, but speak on it in the moment. Don't let it fester and don't let it get to a point where you're like angry at them every time you see them and then it comes out in a negative way and now your friendship is like over. Grow with your friends and at times grow apart, but wish them well. Just because you and someone might have been best friends in high school doesn't mean that they're meant to go the distance with you. And sometimes that is okay. A part of self-care is accepting things as they change and being okay with them. You don't have to dislike that person. You don't have to, say hurtful things about them. Just grow apart and wish them well. And so like with self-care, you definitely don't want to have any negativity or hatred in your heart towards someone, because that is going to affect how you mentally feel and everything that happens to you. So take the time to really wish them well, talk them through maybe why you all are growing apart, and then move on. Set boundaries. Boundaries are so important with any friendship, with relationships. Let and cannot do. With Joan, she really struggled with setting boundaries. And then she would get upset when she would say yes to things that she didn't want to say yes to, or would have to do things that she didn't want to do. And so then she would end up being resentful towards her friends, but it's her fault because you should have said, no, I don't want to do that, or no, I don't have the time to do that. And so with self-care, we want to set boundaries because we don't want people overstepping things that we've put in place for our mental health, because then we end up resentful and mad at them. Next slide. I think we went, there we go. Okay, so next we have Tasha from Power. So I know we normally think about Tasha and we think about her, and we think about Ghost and everything she had going on, but I want to look at Tasha from a more positive standpoint than kind of the way the show portrays her at times. So Tasha was married to an infamous kingpin. when they were divorced due to infidelity. And now she wants to chase her dreams of owning a daycare. During her time of being married to the kingpin, Tasha was the one who was kind of pushing the books and making sure the money looked okay, that they made through the drugs and pushing it through different vendors. And so we see that Tasha is really good at accounting and doing things with money. So we find out that she has dreams of owning a daycare that she put to the side due to having to manage the business with her husband and all of that. So now that Tasha is divorced, now she's able to own the daycare. But she's struggling to understand if she's making the right choice. When she's not seeing people come into the daycare, she's not seeing the money come in the way it should be coming in. And so she's really like, did I make the right choice? You know, should I have stepped out on faith and opened this daycare? Or should I've got a more, you know, or should I stay with my husband because that was a more stable income? You know, I was able to live the lifestyle I wanted to live. And oftentimes I think that happens to a lot of us when we want to change careers. We're not sure if we should take that leap of faith, if we should say, hey, I'm just going to do this new job, I'm going to quit and just go out on faith. And so I feel like this is really good, especially during this time of pandemic where a lot of people have had time to sit at home and think about, what are my passions? What do I want to be doing? Is this fulfilling my purpose, what I'm currently doing? And so I've had a lot of friends that are like, yeah, I am going to quit my job, or I am going to figure out what's my next business venture, because sitting at home, I've realized that I don't feel fulfilled. I'm not fulfilling my purpose. And so some ways to practice self-care when you're trying to change in career is don't be afraid to take the leap. Really think it through. And if you really have a good plan and you have the good support behind you, take the leap of faith. The only thing that would happen is you have to go back to something else, or you have to try a new path. Everything is trial and error, but you never know until you try. Write out your dreams and aspirations. Take the time to really think it through. Like, what do I want to do? What do I wish I was doing? Like, what are some things I enjoy doing that I could make money off of? Because a lot of times that's how people will tell you they went from something that was just a hobby to now it's their career, is they figured out a way to make money off what they love doing. Create a plan. So I love planning. I love, you know, having steps 1 through 10 and all of that, crossing things off my list. So create a plan. What does a change in your career look like? Will you have to, you know, create a new budget? Will you have to, you know, move somewhere else? Will you have to, you know, what does that look like for you? So really take the time to create a plan and make time for your passions. You'll never know what you like doing until you make the time to do it. And I think a lot of times we don't know what we enjoy doing because we don't take the time to do it. We're always working. We're always, you know, helping our significant other, helping our friends, helping our family. And we don't take the time to stay and think, well, what does Danielle enjoy doing? What could Danielle be doing besides the job that I'm doing right now? And so really just taking the time to set time to yourself to think about, what do I enjoy doing, and doing it all the time. And just really creating that pattern for yourself. Next slide. Okay, now we have Zoe from Blackish/Grownish. So Zoe is the oldest child of Bo and Andre on Blackish, who recently has gone to college. She struggled to adjust to her class schedule as well as multitasking. If anybody watches Blackish, you know that Zoe was kind of very entitled and very pampered on the show. So for her to go into making her own life decisions was definitely a transition for her. Because she wasn't used to making her own decisions. She was used to her parents kind of leading the way and telling her, well, you're going to do this, or this is what it's going to look like. And so she never really had the opportunity to kind of make her own decisions until she got to college, and she realized just how difficult that was for her. She also had difficulty learning how to manage money and not depend on her parents. And I feel like this is a struggle for a lot of kids or people that leave the home and go to college. A lot of times your parents are there for you during that time. And so they are kind of making sure that you're doing this or you're doing that. And then you go to college, you struggle because you're not used to making your own decisions. So self-care is so important once you get to college, because you can either make it or break it once you get to college. So I definitely feel like these self-care tips are so necessary. So asking for help. Something that really helped me make it through my first semester of college was asking older people that I knew that were already in college, you know, how did you make it through this? Calling my parents. I think I talked to them more often when I was in college than when I was actually at home. And then finding teachers and mentors who can also help you through this time. Because this is new, you know, it is a transition. And so ask for help, ask people who have already been there. When you're in college, your schedule looks totally different than it does in high school. And so being able to go from, okay, I have an 8 a.m. class, and then I need to be here, and then I need to do this, and then I need to plan time to study, I need to plan time to do this project, making a schedule for your whole semester, because classes and assignments pop up that you forgot about from August and they're due in October. So making a schedule so that you can stay on top of those things. Admit if you're overwhelmed. This goes for any change in environment. Admit that you are not okay and that you need help. I think a lot of times we get to a point where we are overwhelmed, but we're embarrassed to say that because we feel like, oh, we should have it together. We should know what's going on. It's okay. Don't be that person. Admit that you need help and admit that you need to take some things off your plate. Also, don't pretend to be okay. Don't pretend that you are adjusting super well and you're not. Let people know like, hey, I need help with this, or hey, I just really need to take a nap. Really take a moment to step away and understand how you're feeling and what's triggering you to feel that way. Next slide. Next, we have Issa from Insecure. And so I want to focus on Issa and her change in relationships. So Issa and Lawrence were together for about 5 years. They broke up due to being in different phases of life. So they were dating. I'm not going to tell the whole show just in case, you're going to go back and watch, but they were dating. Lawrence wasn't working. He was trying to get into a job for 5 years. So Issa was trying to carry their relationship and she didn't have the best job either. So she got to a point where she was just really frustrated with the way that their life was going because he wasn't working. It didn't seem like he really had any for him. And that really just didn't make her want to be in a relationship with him. And so they ended up kind of fizzling out. The negative part, though, is that they share mutual friends. So they frequently had to see each other and still had to kind of be in communication, whether they wanted to or not. And then they got to a point where they were not sure whether they want to get back together or if they wanted to move on. Relationships are very hard, and you definitely want to make sure you're practicing a lot of self-care within them, because you definitely can get lost and not know which direction to go when you're so enmeshed into a relationship. So different ways to practice self-care with a relationship. Do what makes you happy and not them. Compromise is a thing in relationships, but make sure that the compromises are not always leaning towards your partner. Make sure that you're compromising, that you're both compromising, that sometimes, you're getting what you need and sometimes they're getting what they need. Do not always make sure that they're happy, because if they're always happy and you're not happy, you're going to end up resenting them and wanting to get out of the relationship. And it's not going to be a good situation for either one of you. Don't involve too many outsiders. When you get a lot of feedback from a lot of different people, it makes it hard for you to truly understand what's happening in your relationship, because you have so many other people that are like, well, this is what I would have done, or you should have did this, or, oh, I would have never done that, or, oh, he has the right one. Don't let those people, those naysayers, don't listen to those opinions. Have a few strong people that can give you strong advice and give you good advice, but don't have everyone in your relationship. Don't be afraid to say no or walk away. A lot of times people get into relationships and, everything seems okay. They don't see the red flags. And then when they do, it is 5 years later and they're like, well, should I stay? It's been 5 years. I don't want to waste 5 years. But then it's like, well, do you want to waste another 5 years? So really don't be afraid to say no and walk away. Don't be afraid to end the relationship to get what you need from another relationship. Because like I stated earlier with your friends, the same way that you can grow apart from them, you can also grow apart from your partner. And so don't be afraid to recognize that you are growing apart from someone. State your expectations. A lot of times relationships fail because we don't let people know our expectations from the beginning. And then we get upset when they're not meeting our expectations, but hey, you never told them what they were. So how can someone meet your expectations if you never told them what the expectations are? Let people know what you expect in the relationship, what you're not going to take from the relationship. And if they can't meet those, like I said earlier, say no or walk away. Next slide. Okay, Nola Darling from She's Gotta Have It. So change in self-awareness. So Nola is a very carefree individual. She has lots of different relationships and she's just kind of living life, just a free spirit. She's an artist and just kind of goes where the wind takes her. Nola is balancing multiple relationships. She struggles to understand who she is and what she wants in life, which you can definitely see through all of the different relationships that she has, that she kind of has a different person that matches where she wants to be in life. Like she has, you know, a rich married man, then she has like her fun guy, and then she has the artist guy who's kind of like her, and then she has a woman who is more like stable and more consistent. And so each of the partners that she has kind of shows like what she wants to do, but she's not fully ready to commit to that situation. And then so she attempts to live through all of these people instead of searching within to figure out, well, who is Nola darling? What does Nola want? So some self-care for when you're having changes in self-awareness. Take time for yourself to reflect. Don't be so busy going from situation to situation that you don't take time to see how that situation affected you and what you learned from that situation. That was one thing I feel like we are all blessed with this pandemic for, because we had time to really sit and reflect and figure out, okay, why do I want to be out every weekend? Why can't I sit home by myself? Why am I struggling to be alone? And really taking the time to be like, okay, this is why I'm struggling to be alone. Like, let me fix that. So really taking that time to reflect and not going from relationship to relationship. Don't try to find yourself within other people. The more that you try to find yourself within your friends, within a relationship, within a job, without looking within yourself, you're not going to find who you want to be. You're going to end up becoming other people, and you're not going to be happy. Figure out what makes you happy and why. You know, figuring out, you know, do you like going on walks? Do you like painting? Do you like being carefree? Do you want a more structured life? And why does that make you happy? And moving forward from that, don't do what you feel like other people want you to do or what you feel like other people want you to be doing. Do what makes you happy. And then find ways to better yourself. Take the time to really sit and think, okay, what can my next step be? How can I become the best version of myself? What will help me to reach those goals, like we said earlier? And really sitting and just using that time to reflect, to find ways to better yourself so that you can be better in a relationship, and whether it's a romantic or a platonic relationship. Next slide. Olivia Pope from Scandal. So everybody knows Olivia. Olivia's a fixer. And so she is tasked with going through and helping everybody else fix their issues. And often she doesn't address her own. Olivia really stood out to me because I feel like she represents a lot of us as Black women. A lot of times we're going through and we're helping others fix themselves. We're helping others figure out what they need to do in their life, that we're missing the things that we need to fix in our own lives. We also struggle to open up emotionally. As Black women, a lot of times we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want people to know that we're not okay or that we need help. And so oftentimes that comes through as us being kind of cold and, you know, being kind of stern, and people kind of, you know, the angry Black woman persona. And she's so used to seeing things in one way that she doesn't know how to respond to change. So she's so used to being a fixer and so used to helping people that she doesn't know what to do when people try to help her or when there are shifts in power. So ways to practice self-care. Make time to be alone. Make time to step away from other people's problems. Don't answer the phone. I know for me, being a therapist, there are certain periods of time where my friends will text me or call me and I don't answer because I've literally talked to people all day that I don't want to talk to you. Like, I don't want to hear about your problems for an hour after I've just dealt with other clients for about 10 hours. So really making that time to yourself and sticking to it. And letting people know, like, hey, the first 2 hours when I get off work, I don't want to be bothered, you know? And so like being able to step away from your phone and not feeling like obligated that you have to talk to those people. Set boundaries within the workplace. So after 5 o'clock, turn your work emails off. Let people know that, hey, after 5, I am off. Like, we are not discussing anything after work. And letting people know that like you have your work hours and that is that. Be open to changing your way of thinking. A lot of times things shift, things change. As we mentioned earlier, your friends' ideas change, relationships change, your careers change. So be open to different ways of thinking. Your way isn't the only way of thinking. And so be open to the other ways so that you can implement them into your life. And stay away from bad situations. As we know with Olivia, oftentimes she put herself in risky situations. And the outcomes were not that great. So definitely step away from bad situations and know when and where you should exert your energy. Next slide. Okay, let's chat. Do you see yourself in any of these characters? How so? What are some other self-care skills you would use in these areas? So if you could just drop your comments in the chat. I saw a few people who definitely said they saw a little bit of Joan in themselves. I definitely saw me and Joan when I watched it when I was younger, but as I got older and watched it, I realized Joan was very, I don't know, so rigid, but she definitely had, I think we all have a little bit of Joan in us when it comes to wanting things our way and sometimes self-sabotaging, but I definitely can see that. Okay, we have someone that says that she's Olivia-ish. I definitely can see that for a lot of us as Black women, us being a little bit like Olivia, because, you know, we are fixers as Black women. Like everything we see in, you know, in the media and everything, like Black women are always coming together to fix situations that normally, you know, we didn't even get ourselves into. And so we definitely have to make sure that we're utilizing self-care to make sure that, you know, we're staying on top of what we need to do. So what tips do you recommend for self-care based on what works for you? So for me personally, I've realized that setting boundaries is probably one of the biggest self-care things that works for me. Like ever since I started setting boundaries with friends, with families, like the way I feel just is better. Like the fact that I don't have to respond to every text message, you know, I don't have to, you know, have every conversation with you. Being a therapist, I'm like, oh, well, let me refer you to someone, or let me give you these tips that you can use for your anxiety and, you know, things like that. Also, taking naps. I'm a big napper. I am quick to nap. Even if I have a full day of stuff to do, I will nap. My friends know that. My fiance definitely knows that. So napping is really good for me. Journaling. I love journaling. So taking the time to kind of write down my thoughts each day, or, you know, every other day, or as things come to me, that really helps. Trying out new food, eating is my love language. So definitely sitting and having, whether it's a comfort food or trying a new meal or cooking a new dish. That's a really good self-care thing for me. As well as meditating, sitting, talking to yourself. I talk to myself all the time. My grandma said, as long as I don't respond, it's okay. So really just sitting and meditating and reflecting and just like, okay, Danielle, like, did you handle that situation the best? Like, what could you have done in that situation? Like, you know, just what would you do next time? So yeah, those are all self-care things that definitely work really well for me. Next slide. Another question. So what advice do you have for those who struggle with negative thoughts? I am a big proponent of thought reframing. So as soon as you start to have a negative thought, think of something positive. Think of like some way that you can counteract that thought. So if you're thinking like, oh my gosh, something for me recently, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I've gained weight. But in my head, I'm like, oh, wait, I'm eating healthy, I'm exercising. And then I remember, oh, my period's coming. So figuring out where are the facts and the logic that you're having. If there are no facts to go with your negative thoughts, throw it out. And even if you can find a fact to go with your negative thought, figure out a way to make that fact a non-factor. So figure out, okay, how can I reframe that? So if I do feel like I am getting fat, okay, I could not have dessert every night. Or, you know, I could, you know, incorporate 30 minutes of walking a day. Or, you know, I could incorporate these different things to where I'm not doing this. So definitely just taking the time to think of a positive or something to really take away that negative thoughts. But okay, well, that's not true because I have this, this, and this. And so just making sure that you're constantly doing that. And it is a process. Like it's not going to happen the first time. It may not happen the fifth time, but just keep reframing it until you get to the point where you're always able to reframe your negative thoughts and then you don't even have them anymore. And so I do self-care Sundays every Sunday on my Instagram at Tea with Danielle. Please check it out. These are some of my most popular ones. All Help is in Good Help, A Time to Kill, and Who Do You Love? So every Sunday I focus on different types of self-care. And so it's just different ways for us to practice. And it makes it really relatable. All of my Instagram, I want to make mental health relatable so that people feel like, okay, this is a therapist giving me advice and I'm not crazy, but this is good advice because I'm actually going through these different things. And so that is really the goal of my practice, is to make mental health relatable and make people understand that just because you need to talk to a therapist or you want to talk to a therapist, you're not crazy. You're just having life transitions and issues that you want to talk to with someone that isn't your friend or isn't your family. So please follow me on Instagram so you can check out just the different things that I post daily as well as every Sunday. Next slide. And this is how you can connect with me. That's my phone number, that's my email address, my website, my Facebook, and my Instagram. I really enjoyed today. Please drop any of your questions. I've loved the ones I've gotten so far. Please put any of your questions in the chat. I believe we have about 4 more minutes. And so I would love to answer more questions or comments. Just kind of let me know what you all are thinking. Oh, good. I'm glad you wrote down some of the tips. Any chance we could get access to your self-care slides? Yes. If you do want my slides, if you could just take down my email address and shoot me an email and I will get them over to you. If we don't have any more questions or comments, like I said, please connect with me if you think of anything after the presentation, or if you just, just want to reach out just to reach out, please do. I really enjoyed this presentation. I hope you guys were able to take away some tips and able to kind of just use real life application to kind of understand how to apply self-care and how it can look differently than just the normal napping, going for a run. And yep. Thank you guys. I really enjoyed it. Have a good rest of your afternoon.
Hey everyone, so if you want to just navigate back to the stage, we'll have some music playing, but we're going to take about a 5-10 minute break, and then the next session is going to start at 12. So thank you, Danielle. You did a really good job. All right, have a good one.